Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. What happens when one explosive night turns a controversial figure into the center of the biggest criminal scandal Genoa City has ever seen? Phyllis Summers has spent weeks fighting rumors and accusations that threatened to destroy her reputation and her relationship with her daughter, Summer Newman. But after a violent confrontation at his secluded property, the situation spiraled out of control. Now Phyllis is in police custody, suspected of a brutal crime that has left the entire city in shock and her family shattered. For weeks leading up to that terrible night, Phyllis Summers had been living under an unbearable amount of pressure. Everywhere she went in Genoa City, whispers seemed to follow her. People were talking, speculating, and pointing fingers. The rumors were relentless. Many believed she had secretly interfered with a major business deal connected to the powerful Newman empire, and those accusations quickly turned her into the center of a growing storm. Phyllis had always been a complicated woman, passionate, fearless, sometimes reckless, and never afraid to fight for what she believed was right. But this time the situation felt different. The pressure kept building that day after day, and it began to feel like the walls were slowly closing in around her. What terrified her most wasn't just the damage to her reputation, it was the possibility of losing the one person who meant more to her than anything else in the world, her daughter, Summer Newman. Phyllis knew she had made mistakes in the past. Everyone in Genoa City knew it too, but she also believed that deep down people understood that everything she had ever done came from love for her family, especially Summer. As the rumors continued to spread and the tension grew heavier, Phyllis became increasingly desperate to prove that she wasn't the villain everyone was painting her to be. She wanted the truth to come out. She wanted the accusations to stop. But desperation can push people into situations they never expected. That night, everything finally exploded. Behind closed doors, at a quiet property located far from the busy streets of Genoa City, a confrontation took place that would change everything. The exact details of what happened inside that building were still unclear, but witnesses nearby later described hearing shouting that echoed through the night air. Angry voices clashed with each other, growing louder and more intense by the minute. Then came the sounds of things crashing, furniture being knocked over, glass shattering, and finally a scream so chilling that it sent a wave of fear through the darkness. By the time authorities arrived at the scene, the situation was already chaos. The inside of the property looked like it had been torn apart by a violent storm. Chairs were overturned, broken glass covered the floor, tables had been pushed aside as if a desperate struggle had taken place. Every detail suggested that the confrontation had escalated far beyond a simple argument. But the most shocking development came shortly afterward. Within hours, the next news spread across Genoa City like wildfire. Phyllis Summers had been taken into police custody. Investigators believed she was connected to a brutal incident that left one victim badly injured and another witness completely shaken. The image of Phyllis being escorted by police officers, her hands locked in handcuffs, stunned nearly everyone who saw it. For many people in the city, Phyllis had always been unpredictable, yes, but capable of something this extreme. That was harder to believe. Yet the early evidence seemed to point directly at her. Security cameras positioned near the property reportedly captured footage of Phyllis arriving at the location not long before the confrontation began. Even more troubling, the same footage showed her leaving shortly afterward in a state that investigators described as frantic and disoriented. By the next morning, the story had become the biggest scandal Genoa City had witnessed in years. At the Newman family home, the emotional devastation was immediate. Summer Newman sat motionless on the couch in the living room as the television replayed the breaking news again and again. Each time the footage of her mother being led away by police appeared on the screen, it felt like another piece of her heart was breaking. Tears streaming down her face as she whispered repeatedly that there had to be a mistake. Summer knew her mother better than anyone. She had seen Phyllis make impulsive choices before, but she also knew the fierce love that drove her actions. Phyllis had always fought for her family, especially Summer, but the sight of her mother sitting in the back of a police car was something Summer simply couldn't process. Her entire world suddenly felt unstable. When Nick Newman arrived at the house after hearing the shocking news, he expected a storm of emotions waiting for him. What he didn't expect was the heavy silence that filled the room when he walked in. Summer looked up at him with tear stained cheeks and eyes that were red from crying. She didn't even have to speak. The look on her face was begging for answers. Answers Nick didn't have. Nick had faced countless crises in his life, corporate battles, dangerous enemies, family betrayals, but this situation felt painfully personal in a way he wasn't prepared for. Phyllis wasn't just someone he knew. She was the mother of his daughter, and once upon a time, she had been the woman he loved. He stood there for several seconds without saying anything, his mind racing as he tried to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Meanwhile, details from the police report were already circulating through Genoa City's most powerful circles. The information investigators released painted a disturbing picture of what might have happened that night. According to early reports, the confrontation had begun when harsh accusations were directed toward Phyllis. Those accusations apparently involved secrets she had fought hard to keep hidden for years. The tension grew until the argument turned physical. What started as a heated exchange quickly spiraled into a violent struggle. When the chaos finally ended, one person was left unconscious, and the entire scene looked like the aftermath of a brutal fight. Whether Phyllis intended to hurt anyone or simply lost control in the heat of the moment was still unclear, but law enforcement officials believed the evidence was serious enough to move forward with immediate charges. Throughout Genoa City, reactions were divided. Some people shook their heads and said they had always expected something like this to happen eventually in their eyes. Phyllis had always lived dangerously close to chaos. Others defended her fiercely, insisting that the story didn't make sense and that there had to be more behind the incident. Inside the police station, however, sympathy was in short supply. Detectives questioned Phyllis for hours, pushing her to explain exactly what happened during those explosive moments before the confrontation turned violent. Sources later revealed that Phyllis insisted repeatedly that she never intended for anyone to get hurt. She claimed she had been defending herself when the situation spiraled out of control. But as the night stretched into morning, the reality of the situation began to sink in. The accusations were serious, and the consequences could be life changing. Across town, Summer refused to give up hope. She spent the entire day making phone calls, trying to find a lawyer who could help her mother, and searching desperately for someone who could support Phyllis' version of events. But with every passing hour, her fear grew stronger. When Nick eventually visited the police station to see Phyllis, the encounter left him deeply shaken. Sitting across from her in the old interrogation room, he barely recognized the woman in front of him. Phyllis looked exhausted and emotionally drained, but there was still determination burning in her eyes. She told him everything had happened so quickly. She said she felt trapped. She said she had been attacked. But even as she tried to explain, Nick struggled to reconcile the woman he once loved with the accusations now hanging over her. When he finally left the station, reporters were already waiting outside. Cameras flashed, voices shouted questions. Did he believe Phyllis was guilty? Nick didn't answer a single one. He simply walked past them, his face unreadable. Back at the Newman home, Summer waited anxiously. The moment Nick walked through the door, she rushed toward him, hoping to see reassurance in his eyes. But the silence between them told its own story. Nick didn't know what to believe anymore. Summer collapsed into tears again, clinging desperately to the hope that somehow the truth would prove her mother innocent. Meanwhile, inside the police station holding room, Phyllis sat alone replaying every moment of that terrible night in her mind. She kept insisting that everything had escalated too fast for her to control, that she never wanted anyone to get hurt. But the evidence had already been gathered, statements had been recorded, and the official investigation had placed her directly at the center of the most shocking crime Genoa City had seen in years. The fallout from this scandal is enormous. If the charges against Phyllis moved forward, the consequences could ripple through every powerful family in Genoa City. The Newman family is already under emotional strain, and the situation could create even deeper divisions. Summer is caught between loyalty to her mother and the frightening possibility that the accusations might be true. Nick is facing an emotional conflict that forces him to question someone he once trusted completely. On top of that, the entire city is watching closely, turning this case into a public spectacle that could permanently damage reputations and relationships. Personally, this situation feels like one of those moments where the truth might be far more complicated than the headlines request suggest. Phyllis has always been intense and impulsive, but she is also fiercely protective of the people she loves. It's hard to imagine her deliberately committing such a brutal act without there being more to the story. At the same time, the evidence and the chaos at the scene make it impossible to ignore how serious the situation really is. What makes this story so gripping is that it forces everyone involved to confront a painful question: how well do we really know the people we love? So now the mystery continues to grow. Did Phyllis Summers truly lose control during that explosive confrontation? Or could she be the victim of a carefully planned trap designed to destroy her? And the biggest question of all, will Summer discover the truth before it's too late for her mother? I want to hear what you think. Do you believe Phyllis is innocent, or do you think the evidence is pointing in the right direction? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. And if you enjoy deep dives into dramatic stories like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next shocking twist. Because if this investigation reveals something even darker, Genoa City may never recover.